This story begins in 2014 in New Mexico. What was meant to be a short weekend getaway ended up becoming something no one saw coming, especially for an elementary school teacher named Emily Lambert. At the time, Emily was 30 years old and living in Garland, Texas. She worked as a teacher and was raising two young daughters. She and their father were divorced, but they stayed on good terms and co-parented without much conflict. By all accounts, Emily's life was stable, busy, and full. Not long before this trip, Emily had started dating a man named Robert Early. He was 3 years older than her, and interestingly, they'd gone to the same school years earlier, but never knew each other back then. They reconnected later through mutual friends, and Robert stood out to her right away. What started as casual conversations didn't stay casual for long. They hit it off quickly, and within a few months, they were officially together. By this point, they'd been dating for about 4 months. Emily felt comfortable enough to bring Robert into her life. She introduced him to her parents, Donna and Stephen, and to her daughters. Everyone seemed to like him. He was polite, easy to talk to, and especially good with the kids, which mattered a lot to her. Eventually, Robert took a job working in an oil field in New Mexico and moved there from Texas. He was staying at a hotel in Carlsbad. Since they'd be spending some time apart, they made plans to see each other as soon as they could. They decided Emily would come out for the first weekend of spring. On Friday, February 28, 2014, Emily left her daughters with her parents and started the drive to New Mexico. The trip was long, about 500 miles, roughly 8 hours, but she didn't mind. She was looking forward to the weekend. The next day, Saturday, Emily spoke briefly with her mom on the phone. She sounded relaxed and happy. She told Donna that everything was going well and that she was having a good time. Emily was supposed to drive back home Sunday evening, March 2nd. But that morning, shortly after Donna got home from church, she received a message from Robert asking her to call him. When Donna called, Robert told her something that immediately set off alarms. Emily was missing. He said the two of them had gone out to a bar the night before and got into an argument. According to him, after the disagreement, Emily walked out and never returned to the hotel. Her car was still in the parking lot. Her phone had been left behind in the room. Donna asked him a direct question. Had he called the police? He said no. Without hesitation, Donna told him to call 911 right away. Robert then reported Emily missing. He told the operator that he had already spoken with her parents and her ex-husband, but none of them had heard from her or knew where she could be. He also mentioned that Emily had been drinking before she left the bar. When officers arrived at the hotel where Emily and Robert had been staying, one thing became clear very quickly. All of Emily's belongings were still there. Emily's car was still parked out front. Inside, her purse sat on the passenger seat, with her wallet and personal documents still inside. That alone raised questions. If she'd chosen to leave, why wouldn't she take any of the things she'd need? Robert then told detectives what he said happened the night before Emily disappeared. He explained that they'd gone down to the hotel bar together. At first, everything felt normal. They were drinking, playing pool, and enjoying the night. But at some point, things shifted. While Robert was playing pool with another man, he said Emily became irritated. She walked over to the bar to get another drink. According to him, while she was there, she started talking with a man wearing a cowboy hat and appeared to be flirting. That's when the argument started. Robert told detectives that the man offered to walk Emily back to her room, and Emily mentioned this to him. He said he told her she could go with the guy if she wanted to. After that exchange, Emily walked out of the bar. Robert said he didn't know whether she left with the man or went off on her own. Later, when he went back to their room, she wasn't there. He assumed she just needed time to cool off and decided to go to sleep. When he woke up the next morning and Emily still hadn't returned, he began making calls to her parents, her ex-husband, and eventually the police. About 10 hours later, Emily's parents, Stephen and Donna, arrived at the Carlsbad police station. They wanted to file an official missing person report and help however they could. They told detectives that Emily would never just leave her children, her job, or her life behind. To them, it was obvious that something wasn't right. Detectives also went back to the hotel bar and spoke with the staff. Employees confirmed there had been an argument between Emily and Robert that night. Up to that point, Robert's account matched what they remembered. There were security cameras at the bar entrance and throughout the hotel lobby, so detectives pulled the footage. They were looking for one key answer. Did Emily leave alone, or was someone with her? The video showed Emily leaving the bar at around 11:30 p.m. She was alone. She walked quickly toward her room without stopping, without turning back, and without speaking to anyone. She looked upset. The cameras also caught the man in the cowboy hat watching her as she walked out. Detectives took note of that, especially since Robert had already mentioned that Emily had been talking with him earlier in the night. At first, detectives wondered if the man in the cowboy hat had followed Emily out of the bar. But when they reviewed the footage more closely, that theory didn't hold up. He didn't leave after she did. In fact, he stayed right where he was for about 4 more minutes. During that time, Robert walked out of the bar. That timing stood out. If Emily had gone straight to her room, she would have already been there by then. Detectives made note of it and kept it in mind as the investigation moved forward. Not long after, police reached out to the media to spread the word about Emily's disappearance. Her family did the same, sharing her photo and details online, hoping anyone might recognize her or remember seeing something. Officers continued interviewing hotel guests, but most people hadn't noticed anything unusual. No strange noises, no suspicious activity, except for one man. He was staying in the room next to Robert's. That guest told police that around midnight, he heard what sounded like a woman screaming through the wall. With that information, detectives began to seriously question Robert's original account. If someone heard yelling in the room around that time, then Emily had to have been there, which meant Robert hadn't been fully honest when he said she never came back. 58 hours after Emily was reported missing, Robert agreed to take a polygraph test. It was his suggestion. He said he wanted to clear his name and stop being viewed as a suspect. It didn't go the way he expected. He failed the test. When the examiner told him the results, Robert appeared shocked and asked if he could take it again. Police declined. By that point, they already believed he was holding something back, and the failed polygraph only deepened those concerns. During more questioning, detectives confronted him with what the neighboring guest had reported: the yelling, the timing, and the gaps in his story. That's when Robert changed his version of events. Instead of saying Emily never returned to the room, he now claimed that she did. He said they got into another argument once they were inside. Both of them were upset, and the alcohol they'd been drinking only made things worse. According to Robert, at some point during that argument, Emily stood up and walked out again. He said he waited for a bit, then got in his car and drove around the area, trying to find her. When he couldn't, he said he went back to the hotel, believing she'd return once things cooled down. When Emily still didn't come back, and detectives continued pressing him, Robert changed his story again. This time, he said he saw Emily getting into a large white pickup truck after leaving the hotel. According to Robert, the driver was a man with a mustache wearing a cowboy hat, possibly the same man Emily had been talking to at the bar. Robert claimed that once the truck pulled out of the parking lot, he got into his own car and followed them. He told detectives they drove for about 15 minutes before stopping at an old, abandoned house out in the desert. He said that when the truck stopped, he honked his horn. According to Robert, the driver got out holding a pipe, and Emily stepped out of the truck as well. He claimed she was barely clothed. Robert then said the man raised the pipe as if to hit him. According to his account, Emily stepped in between them, trying to protect him, and was struck in the head instead. He told investigators that he panicked. He said he jumped back into his car and sped away, scared and unsure of what to do. Instead of calling for help, he kept the whole thing to himself. Detectives hear unusual stories all the time, but this one stood out. Even so, they had to follow up on it. Robert said he could take them to the house where he claimed all of this happened. He led them to an abandoned property about 12 miles from the hotel. As detectives looked around, they noticed marks along the dirt road that appeared to show something had been dragged. They followed the trail behind a barn. That's where they found Emily. Her body was naked and partially covered by a metal sheet. Robert stayed inside his car while officers searched the property. When detectives told him they had found Emily's body, his reaction was minimal, almost as if he already knew what they were going to say. Emily's parents, Donna and Stephen, were devastated. Losing a child is something no parent ever expects to endure, and for them, this wasn't the first time. 2 years earlier, their son had died in a car accident. Now, they had lost their daughter too. Of everything Robert told investigators, only 2 parts of his story lined up with the evidence: the location of the abandoned house and the fact that Emily had suffered a head injury. Investigators had serious doubts about the rest. No one had reported seeing a white pickup truck anywhere near the hotel. The security footage made one thing clear: Emily left the bar by herself. The man in the cowboy hat, who Robert claimed she left with, was later identified as Robert's own boss. He had a solid alibi and was ruled out early. Forensic experts also weighed in. Emily had died from multiple blows to the head. She had clear blunt force injuries, bruising on her face, and marks on her neck that were consistent with strangulation. Then detectives reviewed the hotel's front desk security footage. That's when Robert's story really began to unravel. At 11:48 p.m., Robert appeared at the reception desk. He seemed nervous and out of place. He looked around, made a phone call, and then walked back toward the bar. Just 14 seconds later, he returned and asked the receptionist for a spare key to the room. That suggested Emily hadn't let him inside. The receptionist handed him the key at 11:54 p.m., and Robert walked away immediately. The timing lined up closely with what the neighboring guest had reported, hearing arguing around midnight. It pointed to Robert entering the room, and to something happening not long after that ended Emily's life. As investigators dug deeper, more pieces of evidence continued to clash with Robert's account. They learned the call Robert made from the front desk was to Emily. She refused to talk to him. After getting the spare key, he went back to their hallway and called her again. She still didn't answer. The call went to voicemail. Robert didn't hang up. Instead, he used the spare key to enter the room. Because the call was still active, what happened next was recorded on Emily's voicemail. It was unsettling to hear. Emily could be heard yelling that she hated him and telling him to leave her alone. With all of that in mind, detectives brought Robert back in for questioning. They told him directly that no one believed his story anymore. During the interrogation, one of the detectives was able to get him to finally open up. Robert admitted that the argument had started back at the bar and that it centered around the man in the cowboy hat. He said that during the fight, he told Emily she could leave with anyone she wanted. Those words cut deep. Emily walked out, went back to their room, and left Robert behind. When he later returned from the bar, she refused to open the door for him. That's why, he said, he went to the front desk and asked for a spare key. He used the spare key to get into the room, and as soon as he walked in, the argument started back up. Emily told him she was done. She said she was leaving and didn't want to be with him anymore. According to Robert, things escalated when she tried to walk out. He claimed he tried to stop her and that she bit his hand and pushed him away. He said he hit his head against the wall and, in his words, lost it. He admitted that he punched Emily in the face. When she fell to the floor, he kicked her several times. She managed to get back up, but he kept going, hitting her in the head and face over and over. As he described this to detectives, Robert showed no emotion. There was no visible regret, no sign that he grasped the seriousness of what he was admitting. When Emily finally lost consciousness, Robert said he realized he'd gone too far. But instead of calling for help, he decided to cover it up. The hotel room had a door that opened directly into the parking lot, away from the front desk. That's how he was able to carry Emily to his car without being seen. He drove her out to a remote area. At some point during the drive, Robert said Emily regained consciousness. He told detectives he pulled her from the car, grabbed a hand pump, and began hitting her in the head with it. He said her body was too close to the road and that he wanted to move it farther away. What he did next was violent and deliberate. He tied a rope around her neck, attached the other end to his car, and dragged her. That matched the drag marks investigators had found along the dirt road. After that, Robert said he removed all of her clothing, struck her a few more times with the pump, and then covered her body with a metal sheet he found nearby. After that, Robert left the area. He later told investigators he got rid of the rope, Emily's clothes, and the pump. Once he confessed, he led police to the locations where he said he had dumped each item. On March 5, 2014, police arrested Robert Early. He was charged with the murder of Emily Lambert, along with tampering with evidence. Investigators determined that Emily was still alive when Robert took her to the abandoned house, so they also charged him with kidnapping. After meeting with his attorneys, Robert changed his story yet again. This time, he claimed that Emily had already died before he brought her out to that remote location. His legal team argued that if they could convince the court she was already dead, the kidnapping charge should be dropped. But the evidence didn't support that claim. Forensic experts confirmed that Emily was still alive when Robert struck her with the pump. That finding undercut the defense's argument, and the strategy failed. In May of 2015, a jury found Robert Early guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In court, he apologized to Emily's family. He said he wished he could trade places with her. The following year, in 2016, Robert attempted to appeal the verdict, but the court denied the request. If you found this case compelling, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We share crime cases regularly. Until next time, stay safe and take care.